Welcome, my dear friends. Here we are for the fourth moment of reflection. It is the last one in this series of this Salesian online retreat. As I did in the second and third moment of reflection, the Lectio, I would like to recall the journey so far. With our first Lectio Divina on the story of Samuel, accompanied by Eli, the second moment of reflection, the Salesian Lectio, we reflected and we meditated on the dream of 9 years, somehow repeating the same dimension of the call. Yesterday we reflected, we meditated the section from the chapter 4 of the Gospel of John, the meeting of Jesus with the Samaritan woman, a meeting which was gradually creating the right conditions for the Samaritan woman to slowly arrive at this decision to recognize Jesus and to go and give the good news. Here in this last moment, in this Salesian Lectio, I'm going to propose 3 aspects taken from the story of the life of Domenic Savio that Don Bosco himself wrote. The decision to offer you this Salesian Lectio is based on this journey that we have done. The story of the vocation which is a relationship, the call which is a relationship that needs somebody who is accompanying the believer so that gradually, slowly, the person discovers what is God preparing for him or for her. I am not going, of course, to treat the whole life of Domenic Savio. We do not have the time to do it. I'm going to take 3 particular moments from the life of Domenic Savio, which I suggest, if you have time, maybe later on, to download it from the internet. You will find it, you will Google it, you will find it, and just savor, just taste this story, a real story of a real person and a real educative journey. The first reflection that I would like to introduce is taken from the introduction. Don Bosco gives us, through the life of Domenic Savio, a key. He is allowing us, showing us how we can accompany young people in the journey of faith. That young person could be any one of us. That young person that would be needing our help, we could be the ones who will help that person. Don Bosco presents to us a true story, a story of a young person whom he knew well, who without extraordinary efforts managed to reach the summit of true humanity, that is holiness. And I would like to start this Lectio, this moment of reflection, by insisting that when we speak about holiness is about being joyful, we are not lowering the standard. On the contrary, we are meaning that holiness is what Pope Francis has been insisting during these years. Holiness is the day-to-day reality lived under the eyes of God. The first phrase I would like to take and comment, taken from the introduction, as I said, is a short phrase that Don Bosco puts in the mouth of Domenic Savio. If a companion of mine, of my age and circumstances, exposed to the same or even greater difficulties, could yet remain a faithful disciple of Christ, why cannot I do the same? Remember that true religion is not a matter of words. There must be deeds. Hence, if you find something related worthy of admiration, do not be satisfied with saying, I like that, or that is very good, but rather say, I want to put it into practice. I want to put into practice what I see is praiseworthy in others. In the introduction to the life of Domenic Savio, Don Bosco quotes a phrase from St. Augustine. If he or she can reach those heights, why cannot I not do the same? Why cannot I not reach those same heights of holiness? Don Bosco is interested to put the reader, that means you and me today, on the same level as the protagonist. Those who have been able to live a dignified and meaningful life have done so through a series of decisions that have brought them to that particular stage. And this is a very important point that somehow is part of the journey that we have been doing these days. The freedom of the person who is called to discover what is going around, to contemplate, to reflect, to discern, but then at a certain point, I need to make my decisions. I need to do some choices. The second point I would like to comment in this introduction, that life is a series of decisions taken by myself. Certain decisions which are going to somehow orientate my life, which are going to enlighten my journey, cannot be taken by people outside myself. I am the one who is called to take those decisions. In today's language, Domenic Savio probably would go beyond the question of likes. He would not stop there. He would not stop simply by being admired or by remaining on the superficial connectedness of like. Domenic Savio today would not let himself be conditioned by the way others see him or judge him. We have seen yesterday in the reflection on the Samaritan woman that Jesus invited the Samaritan woman, to go deeper, not to stay on the outskirts of the argument. Go deep into your story, and then slowly make sure you have the courage of the qualitative leap. I firmly believe that deep down Domenic Savio had this desire to go deeper. My dear friends, in this first part of our Lectio Salesiana, I would like to invite you, as we try to do the past days, just to recognize how the situation is. We were calling it the background, we were calling it the reality around us. Domenic Savio had a very clear starting point, started from a very clear decision. Well, if others can reach, why cannot I not reach that same level of holiness? I am responsible to do that. And I am not going to remain on a superficial level. I am going to go deeper. You see, my friends, here, what we're dealing with is a question of deep-seated convictions. And allow me to say what I feel, especially during these days where we are benefiting from the collatio, from the sharing every second session of each day. I felt during these days that those of you who were following this process, this retreat, I feel that there is this desire, whether it is big or small, whether it is deeply seated or whether it is seated within my heart, it is there. And my dear friends, we need to recognize it, we need to celebrate it. Not be proud, no, there's nothing to be proud of. But to be able to say, yes, I would like to embrace this journey of faith. I would like to embark on this pilgrimage. That's the starting point. Because, and we mentioned it yesterday during the sharing, if deep down I would like to have a deeper relationship with Jesus, then I am going to take those decisions, I am going to make those choices which are going to express this deep desire. I'll move on to the second part of our reflection. And I am going to take a very small section of chapter 3 of the life of Domenic Savio. You have these quotations written on the PDF document which was sent to you. It says like this: resolutions made by me, Domenic Savio, in the year 1849, on the day of my first communion at the age of 7. I'm going to read them, then I will comment on them, do some comments on them. Number 1, I will go to confession often and as frequently to Holy Communion as my confessor allows. Secondly, I wish to sanctify Sundays and festivals in a special manner. 3, my friends shall be Jesus and Mary. 4th, death rather than sin. 4 very simple resolutions. There is nothing complex about them. There is nothing complicated about them. Very simple. The first one is about confession and communion. The second one is about sanctifying Sundays and festivals. My friends are Jesus and Mary. Death rather than sin. For Don Bosco, holiness is not out there, is not somewhere else, but rather within my reach. Nevertheless, holiness to be attained needs to be sustained by a continuous effort. You remember those of you yesterday who were at the Collatio, we are talking about how do I sustain this continuity in my prayer life. And I gave you the example of the plant that needs a little amount of water every week. This is what Domenic Savio does. This constant, continuous effort towards holiness. I would like to comment, as I said before, these four resolutions. The first 2, confession and communion, sanctifying Sundays and festivals. The first 2 of these resolutions have to do with commitments concerning religious observance, sacramental observance, and festive observance. Yet they are not purely ritualistic. Frequenting confession, receiving communion, observing holidays is not a purely anonymous ritual. It is rather a way of renewing my friendship with Jesus, of renewing my awareness of the presence of Jesus. of renewing the idea of time and space as time and space being given by God. While living these two resolutions, Domenic Savio was aware that there were beautiful and positive consequences which had their own effects in sustaining his friendship with God and his commitment to that friendship. We come to the third and fourth. My friends, Jesus and Mary, death rather than sin. And before I comment these two, I would like to put in a small reflection. We have been constantly reminding ourselves, I was commenting on what I'm going to say, you were reacting to it positively. We were constantly saying faith is an experience of love and friendship. More than once we have heard, we have shared, faith is a question of a relationship, friendship with God. Therefore, it is this type of faith which gives me the courage to live happily my love experience and not to be afraid to give witness to it. Sometimes by word, many times by my actions, through my silence. But the silence of a believer is stronger than words. That means that when Domenic Savio is saying, my friends are Jesus and Mary, he is not remaining on the superficial. I want to sustain this friendship with Jesus and Mary. And here we remember the dream of 9 years, the noble man. How am I going to do this? John Bosco asked. I'm going to give you a teacher. She will show you the way, under whose protection everything is wisdom, without whom everything is foolishness. That means that when Domenic Savio is saying, my friends are Jesus and Mary, he is expressing a deep conviction. Let's call it devotion, but devotion as a decision, not devotion as something ritualistic. It is a decision, it is a devotion. I am devoted to somebody, I am devoted to Jesus and Mary, with whom I am going to be helped, accompanied, strengthened on my journey of faith. There you are, my friends. This friendship, it empowers my growth. It helps my spiritual maturity. A person who is deeply rooted in the friendship with Jesus, he or she knows that he or she is not alone. That in front of difficulties, in front of situations which are going to create some problems, I know I am not alone. To use the words of the dream of 9 years, I feel the hand of Mary on my head. Don Bosco understood this, and for us today it is an urgent invitation, my friends, that where there is a sense of God, because basically when Domenic Savio says, my friends are Jesus and Mary, he is saying, I want God to be present in my life. I want to be aware that Mary is present in my life. Where there is a sense of God, there is a sense of the divine, positive and loving, not as a source of fear. No, not as somebody who is up there ordering me. No, as somebody who is journeying with me, as a mother who is maternally, compassionately sustaining me. There are aspects and attitudes in human nature which will certainly grow and flourish. And I feel and I know that what I am saying, many of you are saying within themselves, that's true. When I am aware that Jesus is with me, when I feel the presence of Mary accompanying me, I am somebody else. I feel strengthened, I feel accompanied. We come to the fourth and last one, death rather than sin. Now, if it's not understood within this journey of faith, within this journey of a relationship with Jesus and Mary, within a journey of love and happiness, positivity, proactiveness, we could understand this phrase in another manner, in a negative manner, which is not. Domenic Savio here on this phrase touches a very delicate and meaningful note. Domenic Savio, his life is telling us that life is only worth living when I am one with my Creator. That sin creates a distance from the one who created me, from the one who loves me, from the one who wants me to achieve the fullness of humanity, holiness. Sin takes away life, real life, true life. Domenic Savio is communicating to us today a vision, a positive vision of life. As I said, we can say that his approach is proactive, that is, he is not going to let anything come in between him and God. He is not going to let anything dominate him, taking him away from God. No action is going to create a distance from God, distance from Mary. For Domenic Savio, Jesus was not an object of belief, but an experience of friendship. An experience where he felt the presence of God, he knew that God was helping him, and he felt encouraged by that. It's a presence of Jesus who is giving direction while influencing his decisions. We move on to the last, which is a beautiful dialogue that Don Bosco had with Domenic Savio before he accepted Domenic Savio in Valdocco. And I leave you to read this dialogue, which is very deep, beautiful. It is as simple as it is profound. That when Domenic Savio says, "What do you think? Will you take me to Turin with you to study?" And Don Bosco said, I replied, I thought there was a very good material to work upon. And a material, in Latin it is called stoffa, that means texture, material, drapery. And Domenic Savio answered, well, then I must be the material and you are the tailor. You will fashion it. Take me with you, therefore. And Don Bosco said at a certain point, well, your health is delicate, which is true, he died very young. And the quick answer of Domenic Savio is very, very nice. God has given me health and every assistance till now. He will surely help me in the future. Now in the PDF I present several points which I would like briefly to go through them. I mentioned this section, holiness is a question of tailoring. From this dialogue we discover what Don Bosco would like to say to you and to me today. Never forget that Don Bosco uses this story of Domenic Savio somehow to tell us that you and me, we are the Domenic Savios of today. We are the people who are called to discover how beautiful it is to be friends with God and that we can reach the heights of holiness. Don Bosco is saying to us that it is within my heart that I freely accept to be in a deep relationship of love with God. It's your decision. We talked about this yesterday, the decision by the Samaritan woman. Jesus who is encouraging her. The decision by John Bosco in the dream of 9 years. The decision of Eli listening to the decision of Samuel listening to Eli, his educator. Secondly, out of an experience of love, that a life project can come out. We do not see our future properly if we do not see it through the lens of love of God for us. My freedom to live this project, it's not only my responsibility. It is my responsibility, helped, accompanied, sustained by the grace of God. It is not only me, and me. No, it's myself and Jesus with me. In my daily experience, with all its simplicity, let that simplicity become the place where God is speaking to you, where God is blessing you, but where God can bless others through you. There are 4 words which you will find in the document that you will have: a heart, a project, the grace of God, and living experience. These are, my dear friends, the 4 characteristics of any educational experience brought forward by Don Bosco. Touches the heart of the young person, invites that young person, challenges to listen to what is God's project for him or for her, knowing that God's grace is going to be there. And this is going to happen in your day-to-day experience. I believe that these days we have insisted on this, that our heart is the place where we listen to God. Our heart is the place where we discover God's project, where we discover His help, His compassionate presence, His grace, and we go and live it day by day. Domenic Savio's experience underlines and brings to our attention how many young people even today are ready to be positively challenged by God. Yesterday we mentioned this point. When God is challenging us, He is not challenging us in a negative way. He is positively challenging us. God is not a threat. God would like to invite us to be whom we are called to be. Holiness is possible. The Stren of Director Major treated this subject, holiness also for you. I would like to finish, there are some other points, by a phrase that Don Bosco puts in the story of Domenic Savio, following a sermon that Domenic Savio heard. There are the following points. There are the following points. First, it's God's will that we should become perfect. That's what God wants from us. That is His desire for you and for me. Secondly, it is easy to become so. Thirdly, an exceeding great reward is laid for those who arrive at perfection. Don Bosco writes, the effect of the sermon on Domenic was to set his heart aglow with the love of God. My dear friends, we can be the Domenic Savios today. Do not be afraid. Attaining holiness is God's desire for us. Holiness, which means the fullness of our friendship, of our relationship with God. God will help us to journey on this way. It is possible, and the great reward is present for us. I would like to conclude by mentioning some indispensable and fundamental conditions, because I am sure that when we will have the collatio later on, many of you are going to say, Father, what are the conditions? How can we favor an environment where this can take place? And I presented 4 points here that can help us to be protagonists of holiness, not only receivers of holiness. The first one is creating a family spirit, an atmosphere of love, not fear, an environment where joy is transmitted and not tension. We know that every Salesian house worth its name is an environment where when people come in, when young people come in, they feel welcome. Please, my friends, wherever we are engaged, see how we can favor this family spirit. Did you notice that during this online retreat, we succeeded to create a community spirit? We join this conference every time, 10 minutes before, there are already some people there, and we start chatting together. Even on the worldwide network, we succeed to create a family spirit. Imagine how much this family spirit can favor connectedness with our young people. A second condition is the presence of adults and young adults who are witnesses of true joy and happiness. We talked yesterday about the need of spiritual companions, of adults who are wise and holy. My dear friends, probably some of you, without knowing it, you are accompanying adolescents or young adults by animating different presences in our houses. Continue to do that, but continue also to find solace, accompaniment, help from others who can accompany you. That means an environment who accompanies people, especially young people. The third point for holiness to become a true reality, a spiritual proposal, a spiritual journey, where in a systematic way I can renew my awareness of God's love for me and my commitment not only to live that love, but to communicate it, to radiate it, to share it with others. An experience where love is felt, contemplated, and celebrated. Love is not only consumed. No, I feel it and I am happy about it. And not only I feel it, I contemplate it. I will make sure that it gets deeper. But I am also called to celebrate it and witness it to others. The fourth point, holiness becomes a way of recognizing how much God loves me. Don't imagine that holiness is about doing something. No. Holiness is an experience of faith, and I quoted Pope Benedict. Faith initially is just calm down and recognize that God loves you. Be aware that you are loved by God, no matter what, no matter where, no matter when. Finally, holiness, therefore, grows from being a personal experience that I feel to a personal experience that I share. We have mentioned it more than once. Holiness is not a self-centered experience. The good news that I receive is not that I receive it to keep it. Holiness is an experience where I discover how good is God to me, within me, but then I am called to cherish that love and share it with others. I mentioned this already in one of the lectures where I said we need to discover the beauty of discipleship, the beauty of following Jesus, but also the beauty of apostleship, of going out and share what has been freely given to me. Holiness is joy. Holiness is possible. May we will joyfully accept this good news. With responsibility, let us deepen it and with gladness let us share it. May God bless you all.